David Morgan had everything that people in New York dreamt of: wealth, power, status, and control. He owned $1 billion tech empire and was known as the man who could freeze a room with a single look. But behind the sharp suits and endless board meetings was a man whose life had collapsed quietly the day his wife, Amelia, died in a tragic car accident. Since that day, David had raised his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, alone, though "raised" was a strong word. Lily hadn't spoken a single word since her mother's death. Therapists said it was selective mutism triggered by trauma. David blamed himself. In public, he was the stoic billionaire. At home, he was a father unable to reach his own child. On a cold Sunday morning, tired of the sterile silence of their Manhattan penthouse and the failed therapy sessions, David decided to take Lily out, somewhere far from the marble floors and gold-plated cutlery. He drove aimlessly until he stopped at a modest diner tucked into a quiet Brooklyn street. The inside smelled of butter, coffee, and warmth, 3 things David had forgotten. And then came Sofia Alvarez, the waitress who didn't flinch when she saw the billionaire walk in. With messy hair tied in a bun and a faded apron, she greeted them like any other customer, with heart. She knelt beside Lily, offered her a paper crown with her pancakes, and told her, "You're the queen of this booth today." Lily didn't speak, but she smiled, a real, soft, glowing smile. And David noticed. He returned the next day. Then again. It became routine. For the first time in years, Lily showed signs of life, and it was all because of Sofia. She wasn't trying to impress David. She had no idea about his wealth. She treated him like a tired father, not a tycoon. And slowly, David started seeing her differently, not just as someone who brought his daughter joy, but as someone who reminded him how to feel. Sofia, on the other hand, was juggling bills, 2 jobs, and her sick mother in a shared apartment. She didn't have time for love, let alone a billionaire. But Lily's innocent bond with her melted every wall. One evening, as they ate together at David's mansion, an invitation Sofia only accepted because Lily insisted, David looked at her and said something no one could have predicted: "Sofia, marry me." She froze. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Not for romance. Not for appearance. For Lily. She smiles because of you. She speaks because of you. You saved her." "That's not a reason to marry someone," she whispered. "It's the most important one I've ever had," David replied. And just like that, the world lost its mind. The media exploded. Headlines screamed about a billionaire marrying a broke waitress. Sofia's past was dug up, her father's arrest, her bankruptcy, her minimum wage jobs. David's investors panicked. His family insulted her. His late wife's relatives tried to gain custody of Lily. The world called her a gold digger, a manipulator. But David stood beside her. In front of reporters, he said, "Judge me, not her. I asked her to marry me. Because I saw more grace in her than I've seen in any boardroom." Sofia didn't break under pressure. She stayed strong, not because she wanted the mansion, but because every time Lily looked at her with those wide, hopeful eyes and said, "Don't go," she knew she couldn't. Even when tabloids paid her old friends to share secrets. Even when she was mocked for how she dressed at elite events. Even when people spat cruel comments in grocery store aisles. She stayed, for Lily. And slowly, the world changed. Lily began to heal. Her voice returned. She started school. She painted, sang, and introduced Sofia as "my real mom." David began to change too. The man who once ran empires with ice in his veins now came home early to read bedtime stories. He began donating anonymously to single mothers. He built a community kitchen in Sofia's name. Love, the kind that doesn't come wrapped in red carpets, began to grow between them. One night, as they watched Lily sleep, David whispered, "I asked you to marry me for my daughter. But now, I can't imagine life without you, for me. Sophia held his hand and said, I stayed for her. But I fell in love with both of you. Years passed. And the world no longer saw Sophia as the waitress who married money. They saw her as the woman who helped a child find her voice. As a mother who gave up her past for someone else's future. And as a wife who taught a billionaire what it meant to be human again. At his retirement speech, David said to the world, we spend our lives chasing profits. But the greatest investment I ever made was sitting down at a $5 diner table with my daughter, and meeting someone who reminded us both how to feel.